4 years is a long time to be away from the center of pop music, especially when your last album was the kind of global event that made people rethink an entire sound. So when Harry Styles quietly began teasing something new, the obvious question was not if he would return, but which version of him would show up. The answer, it turns out, is not the one most people expected. The new record arrived on March 6th under a title that feels more like a late-night instruction manual than a traditional album name. And buried inside that project is one track that might completely change how you hear the rest of his catalog. But before that, there's a detail about the album's production that is being overlooked, and it explains a lot about why this project sounds the way it does. And let's be honest, the man runs marathons for fun, so a 4-year break probably felt like a light jog to him. For a certain generation, Harry Styles is not just a musician. He is the last thread connecting them to one direction, which means every release becomes a cultural event, even when the music has moved far away from that band's early sound. When the single Aperture arrived, it was immediately clear that Harry Styles was no longer interested in simply making guitar-driven pop. The single had a pulse that felt more suited to a late-night drive through a city than a coffee shop playlist. But what was less obvious was whether the full album would commit to that direction or just tease it. The album, titled Kiss All the Time, Disco Occasionally, commits. And that title is not just a random phrase, it actually tells you exactly what the record is trying to do before you hear a single note. Kiss all the time, meaning keep the romance and the melody close. Disco occasionally, meaning do not be afraid to lean into the dance floor. That balance is the entire project in one sentence. Harry Styles has always been a bit difficult to pin down. One minute he's the rock-influenced heartthrob from One Direction, the next he's experimenting with psychedelic folk and soft pop. So when the full project landed, it felt like another shift. The record leans into club textures, four-on-the-floor rhythms, and a kind of late-night energy that is a long way from the acoustic warmth of Fine Line or the breezy pop of Harry's house. Now, if you're expecting the hyperpop chaos that has been dominating certain corners of the charts recently, that's not exactly what's happening here. This is more like a carefully built bridge between classic disco, modern dance production, and the kind of melodic instincts that Styles has always had. And that combination is more interesting than it sounds on paper. The first thing that stands out on a technical level is the production. Kid Harpoon, who has worked with Styles for years, clearly had a massive role here. According to the credits and multiple reports, the production is layered enough that many of these tracks could work as instrumentals. That's both a compliment and a quiet criticism. A club record often lives or dies by its grooves, and this one is frequently excellent, but it also means the lyrics sometimes take a back seat. For an artist who has written some genuinely thoughtful lines in the past, this is not the most lyrically dense project he's ever released. Still, there are moments where the writing sharpens, and one of those moments arrives early in the track list. The song is called American Girls, and it was the one I was most curious about before pressing play. The reason is simple. As someone from the Midwest, I fit the title demographic, and I wanted to hear what he would actually do with that idea. What he does is borrow from artists like Dev Hynes and Tame Impala, pulling the verses into a soft, almost subdued space before the chorus snaps into something much bigger. Lyrically, the track follows the narrator's observations about American girls and the pattern of his friends ending up marrying them. Now, because Harry Styles has been publicly linked to actress Zoe Kravitz in recent years, a lot of listeners are naturally going to connect that line to his personal life. Whether that connection is intentional or not is something only he knows, but the song itself is strong enough to stand on its own, and it's one of the clear highlights of the record. It also raises an interesting question about the rest of the album. Can a project built for the club still carry that kind of personal weight, or is this track just an exception? That question is answered almost immediately by the next major moment. A song that might end up being the biggest hit from the project even though it was not the lead single. It is called Taste Back, and if you loved the brighter, radio-ready side of Harry's house, this is probably the track you will replay first. The story is about someone unexpectedly walking back into your life after years of distance, and the narrator is caught between two possibilities. Is this a full reunion or just a temporary little love? That question hangs over the entire song, and it is exactly the kind of emotional ambiguity that made As It Was such a global moment back in 2022. Taste Back has a similar pulse, with an upbeat production that almost masks the uncertainty underneath. If the summer charts need a song that feels both honest and easy to dance to, this is a very strong candidate. And that is not just fan optimism. The structure of the song, the way it builds, and the hook are all designed to get stuck in your head without sacrificing the emotion. But not every song on this album is trying to be emotionally complicated. Dance No More is exactly what the title suggests, except the definition of disco here is looser than you might think. This is not the smooth 70s sound of the Bee Gees and Donna Summer. Instead, Harry Styles treats disco as anything a person might dance to, and the result is a relentless mix of synths and drums that feels engineered for a night out. It is probably the most direct track on the record, and the production is so sharp that you could strip the vocals away and still understand why the song exists. That might sound like a backhanded compliment, but for a dance record, it is actually the point. You are not meant to sit with a notebook and analyze every line. You are meant to move, and on that front, the song delivers. The only question is whether it will translate to radio, because it is a little more aggressive than the average pop single. Then, the album takes a turn. The final track, Carla's song, is not a party song. It's the kind of song that makes you want to drive at night with the windows down and think about everything you've been avoiding. According to what has been shared about the track's backstory, it was inspired by watching a friend hear Paul Simon for the first time, which is a very specific and oddly beautiful origin. The central repeated line, "It's all waiting there for you," sounds simple at first, but the way it is delivered over an urgent, almost restless instrumental changes the meaning. It becomes less of a reassurance and more of a reminder that the world is full of possibilities that most people never actually reach for. That is a much deeper note to end on than a disco album has any right to hit, and it is the moment that separates this project from being just a fun genre exercise. For me, it is also the song that reveals the album's hidden ambition. It wants you to dance, yes, but it also wants you to feel something afterward. Looking at the entire record, the 4-year gap between albums starts to make a little more sense. It's not just that Harry Styles needed time away from the spotlight, it's that he needed room to build something that did not repeat what he had already done. Is Kiss All the Time, Disco Occasionally the most lyrically complex album of his career? No. Does it need to be? Not really. The production is the star here, and there are enough emotional peaks to keep it from feeling hollow. My biggest complaint is also my most predictable one. I wish the wait had been shorter. But as someone who understands burnout and the need to step back, I can respect the decision. And if the worst thing you can say about an album is that it took too long to arrive, then the artist is probably doing something right. There's also something quietly reassuring about hearing an artist in his 30s take a risk instead of replaying the same sound over and over. So, yes, Harry Styles is back. The new direction works, the singles have potential, and the closing track is genuinely special. Whether this becomes the album of the year or just a very good transition record depends on how the rest of 2026 plays out. But one thing is clear. He has not lost the ability to surprise people. And in an era where pop music can feel predictable, that is more valuable than almost anything else. The album is not perfect, but it doesn't need to be. It's exactly what it promises. A collection of songs that want you to feel something while the bass is still ringing in your ears. And honestly, that's a pretty good reason to celebrate.